option. That's the option, 13.
Welcome to our newest Volaire video. We're going to be talking about the American Airlines Network and the Alaska Airlines Network post-pandemic. These are brought to you, as always, by Alex Lynch at Gen XI Productions. I'm Jack Penning. We have a special guest again today, Zoomin with Volaire, where we interview a guest over Zoom. Will Birchelman, our Director of Air Service Development, is back with us today. Let's hop in on your hometown airline, an airline that used to work for American, because it would seem there are some weaker points to that network.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So let's start with the obvious. We talk about sacred cows, but I believe in American's case, there really are two sacred cows. So those cows are both Charlotte and DFW. Now, between the two, DFW emerges as the clear strongest hub. It generated, before the COVID-19, it was generating almost 30,000 local PDU a day. We all know that a hub relies on a strong local component to be financially successful. On the other hand, you have Charlotte, which is a much smaller local market. In fact, among American's top markets, Charlotte is only the 6th largest in terms of local traffic. However, it plays a very, very important geographic role, flowing traffic from north to south. And it's competitive with Delta's Fortress Hub in Atlanta. Prior to COVID-19, American had put a lot of emphasis on markets like LAX, and had at one point planned to build that into its Trans-Pacific Gateway. There was also plans to grow in Seattle. However, if we assume in the post-COVID world that things are going to be a lot smaller, I think it really calls into question the role that a market like LAX will play. I imagine that it will continue to be a strong local market, but may not necessarily serve as a true connecting hub in the way I think some people thought it would. I mean, LAX all along really was just mostly meant to feed some of those trans-Pacific services. Phoenix certainly is it's a growing market. In fact, it's one of the fastest growing metros in the United States, but it's also a strong, it's a strong location for Southwest. And in an environment where capacity has to be cut, do you want to compete head on with Southwest in a market like Phoenix when you've got two stronger hubs in Dallas and Charlotte that can, in many respects, serve a lot of the same O&D markets? Phoenix does serve a few unique markets in the Intermountain West region, but I think the revenue that can be generated out of DFW probably offsets that. Not saying Phoenix is going to go away, but I'm saying that if you look at the hub structure, if you have to make some cuts, that might be the place where you do it. Same with DCA. DCA also has been traditionally a hub in the Mid-Atlantic region, but I think that if you have to retrench and focus on the key local markets out of DCA.
Right, and also American is going to have this new partnership with Alaska Airlines joining Oneworld, where they could really use Alaska to cover a lot of the West that they would have covered out of LA or out of Phoenix. And so, I think that takes away some of the emphasis on American building that up on its own.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, because Alaska is going to supply that north-south feed along the West Coast. And even again, a lot of that Intermountain West traffic can come from Alaska. So again, it has a tendency to call into question the long-term role that Phoenix will play in American's network. Again, we're not saying that Phoenix is going to go away. It will continue to be a large market in American's network, but it just simply might not have the prominence that it did in the past, given the Alaska Airlines code share.
I agree, and that brings me to Alaska, which is my hometown hub carrier here in Portland, the largest carrier here by far. But we've already seen them pulling away from some of the transcons and secondary markets out of Portland and even out of their California cities. They're definitely going to be focusing on Seattle. The competition there may be different. Is Alaska going to be a considerably smaller carrier?
I think it's more than likely going to be the case. I think that when you look at two of Alaska's biggest markets, obviously Seattle followed by Portland, even going into the pandemic, Portland was significantly smaller than Seattle. In fact, almost to the tune of 50% smaller. And so when you have two hubs that are so closely related geographically, you have to wonder will it make sense to operate both, as true functioning hubs, similar to some of the other network carriers who have multiple hubs. I think that Portland will continue to be a strong market in Alaska's network. I mean, Alaska dominates the Pacific Northwest. So there's no reason to think that Portland's going away. But I really think that with the American code share, Portland's role as a secondary hub perhaps falls a bit in prominence, and American picks up a lot of the slack, particularly in those north-south markets that American and/or Alaska can fly down to LAX, San Diego, those types of markets. San Francisco.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that assessment. I think American also can flow the east-west over its mid-continent hubs, the main one being Dallas-Fort Worth, for the Pacific Northwest, where you don't have the emphasis on the connectivity at Portland. And I think, with Alaska, it'll be interesting to see how Alaska and American rationalize the LAX market, because I think the competition there is so intense, but they will have a significant advantage just because of Alaska's breadth up and down the West Coast, and Americans' ability to take LAX to the east.
Jack, I mostly agree with you. I think for California, it's a pretty cut and dry case where American will be able to pick up a lot of the slack in markets like San Francisco, certainly LAX. But I might disagree just a bit in terms of the Pacific Northwest, because I think that while the American and Alaska code share will bring benefits to both carriers, the reality is that today American only really flies to both markets from its hubs. And so will it be as attractive to customers who are on the One World Network to have to double connect from, say, a market in the Midwest to Chicago to Portland to get wherever they're going? I'm not so sure, but I think that those hub markets flying to Portland and Seattle on American's network will provide a plethora of traffic to Alaska.
Again, we thank Will for joining us so much to talk about the future of the American and Alaska Airlines networks. Our next Zoom In with Volaire in a couple days' time, we'll be talking about the future of the United Airlines network and how they're going to work out having multiple hubs in the same region. Look for that in just a couple of days. Thanks for watching and stay safe.